Hi, and welcome to the second session in our AI Maturity Series, 6 Pillars for Smarter Business. My name's Lauren Howells. I'm delighted to be your host today. So we're just going to give it a couple of minutes so that we can let everybody join the session. But in the meantime, let me spend a few minutes just setting the scene. So as I said, this is our second of a 4-part series of webinars where we're exploring what it means to become a truly AI mature organisation. And across these sessions, we're diving into our 6-pillar framework, which helps organisations move from experimenting with AI to embedding it in a way that drives real business value. So we've got 2 speakers today. They are Becky Davis, our AI Consulting Director, and Neil Anderson, who's our Chief Technology Officer of our Data and AI practice. And before I hand over to those brilliant speakers, just a couple of quick housekeeping notes. So first of all, this is a one-way webinar, so no one can see you or hear you, so feel free to relax, grab a coffee, enjoy the session. But if you'd like to ask questions, and we really encourage you to do so, please use Slido, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. You can submit questions anonymously or with your name, and throughout the session, pop them in Slido, and then I'll come back at the end of the session to put your questions to our speakers. And then finally, if you'd like to turn on closed captions, you can find that option in the bottom left-hand corner of your screen. So that's everything from me for now. Thank you again for joining us. Let's get started. I'm going to hand over now to Becky.
Amazing. Thanks so much, Lauren. And hello, and a really big welcome from me to our second webinar in the AI Maturity Series. We're really glad to have you back. Or if this is your first session, really warm welcome from me. Today, we're going to go a little bit deeper into what it takes to embed AI within your organisation effectively and sustainably. But before I hand over to Neil and we dive into the detail, let's take a moment to step back and look at the bigger picture. The AI landscape is evolving at remarkable pace, from generative AI transforming the way that we create and communicate to predictive analytics driving those smarter decisions across every organisation we work with. AI is no longer a future concept. It's here and it's real, but you all know this, don't you? And I'm guessing that's exactly why you've joined the call today. With that rapid progression comes complexity. Of course it does. Many organisations that I'm talking to on a daily basis are feeling both a mix of excitement and pressure. I'm hearing questions like, where do we start? How do we scale? Am I already behind? These are all completely normal. Change brings uncertainty, and we know it can feel overwhelming. So that's exactly why we've invested in developing our AI maturity framework, to break down that complexity into manageable, actionable steps. Our framework is built around 6 core pillars, and each one of those has been designed to give you some clarity and some confidence and a roadmap for you to progress. You don't have to do everything at once, and we are absolutely here to guide you through it. Our organisation, Secretariat, brings deep experience in digital transformation. We're trusted by both private and public sector organisations in the UK. For over 50 years, we've been helping organisations navigate change. And for the past 20 years, we've been building our AI capability. And that experience really matters because AI transformation is, at its core, the next evolution of digital transformation. So let me reassure you, AI transformation is not about starting from scratch. It's about building on the foundations of data, process optimization, building capability in your people, and strong governance, areas where we've delivered time and time again. But AI technology is powerful and it's different to more traditional technologies. You will find yourselves in new conversations and working through new risks. So whilst the principles of transformation will remain the same, you will need to build your AI literacy. And these webinars are designed to start that literacy journey for you. So in today's session, we'll continue to unpack the maturity model, giving some really practical advice, sharing insights and showing you what good looks like when it comes to adopting AI responsibly and effectively. In our first session, we looked at strategy and governance pillars, which really set the vision and foundations. Today, we're going to dive into the next pillar, which is all about technology and infrastructure. Because without the right technology in place, your AI ambitions won't scale, no matter how advanced your models or strategies are. This session, will show you what good AI tech looks like, the common pitfalls to avoid, and how to build something that is future ready. I'll be back to join you all for questions, but for now, over to you, Neil.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, so as Becky was saying, what I'm here to speak about is the technology and innovation aspect of our maturity assessment. So the 9 principles that were up on screen, I'm going to use them as kind of a guide to walk through. And what I'm looking to do is bring each to life with examples to try and demonstrate the sort of key technical foundations that we look at and cover within the maturity assessment. Really what I'm trying to do is demonstrate the value of the assessment and how it can really help accelerate your adoption of AI in a scalable and robust manner. Okay, so moving on to the first of the principles, it's all around value management. Now, I guess we all understand the AI hype. We all know that it's been touted as a massive advancement solution for any sort of problem, and part of that I think is driving a lot of POCs. So people are experimenting with AI and trying to understand how it's going to deliver the value within their context or within their business. But unfortunately, there's this problem that a lot of these POCs are ending up in the AI POC graveyard. So Gartner's claiming there's about 80% of these POCs don't go anywhere. Now, I guess from my experience and from understanding and looking at some of these sorts of things, it's because we've almost forgotten, I think, because of all the hype, some of the sort of fundamental things that you need to do with any technology or any software delivery, and that's about deliver business value. It all comes back to what is the business value that you're trying to do. What's the purpose of the AI? So again, how do you show that? So one of the key things that we've been doing for years, and it's no different with AI, is you need to understand how do you measure that business value? What's the KPIs? And you start reporting on it. And I think this is really important that this is done up front and in advance, which is the bit that I think is missed sometimes. And then that way, when you enter the proof of concept, you kind of know what it is you need to demonstrate, what you're trying to prove, what the AI is going to help you with. The other thing I think that's sometimes forgotten is to be realistic with those POC scope. A proof of concept is supposed to be a fast delivery that goes and proves something. In this case, maybe a technology solution with AI. So you need to be realistic about those. But I think if you bring those in from the outset and actually understand what the value is that you're looking to demonstrate, then you've got something you can measure the success of it, and that will really help get you from doing that proof of concept into identifying how and where you take things forward, i.e. be able to demonstrate a business case for taking the POC through to a product. And that's one of the bits I think that I see all the time that's kind of missed around the technology assessment, and it does lead to this AI POC graveyard. Now, the second bit that I'm going to touch on throughout the webinar is, in terms of the value, part of the offset of that value is your kind of operational costs, your operational environment. And there's a number of ways that you can manage that. And again, some of this is not new to AI, but from I guess all the cloud and work that's been going on for the last decades or so, people are quite comfortable, quite used to the concept of FinOps or financial operations. So this is where you manage real time your costs for those operational environments. So that's one of the other key things I think that we need to fit in the AI space, because it can get expensive. So you need to understand again the value that you're looking to deliver and how much it's going to cost you to deliver that. Okay, moving on to the next principle. So the next principle is all about risk management. So what's the risks that people are talking about? People are identifying issues or identifying potential problems with AI, and quite rightly so. There's lots of things that could happen with it, like how's the data used, how's it managed, where's that getting exposed to. What I would say is that the risks from AI are different from traditional risks. With traditional risks, for I guess technical delivery, quite often an approach to mitigate a lot of the technical ones is you build a perimeter, you secure that perimeter, and then within that perimeter you have your data and your applications, which de-risks exposure to people taking it, for example. Now, where AI is different is to get the benefits of AI, you're really having to use that data, whether it be train the AI in your data or whether it be use that data through the use of AI. Now, if you think about it, to get the most value of it, the data that you're going to have in there is your corporate IP, your secret sauce, so to speak, or it might be your customer's personal information. So those have to be protected. You have to protect that, and with it becoming part of the AI, the difference here is it's not just the data that you're protecting, but the AI becoming the data almost. You need to understand where that AI sits within the landscape, and it may well come out of that boundary that I was talking about. Okay, a second example of kind of risks that are new in AI is things like hallucinations. Now, there's well documented cases of kind of hallucinations catching companies out, sort of leading in organizational damage in terms of reputation or worse. There is ways that you can protect against hallucinations. So, for example, one of the techniques or the approaches around with technology is to use a retrieval augmented generation. That's RAG. So what that is it's a pattern where you will use traditional or more traditional methods to go and find the information that somebody's looking for when they go into the generative AI. So take the prompt and it will understand it well enough to go and find a number of the most relevant things. It would then pass them back into the AI or the large language model and basically ask it to answer the original prompt based on that information you provided it. So it's a way of grounding the response into your data, so therefore it's less likely to hallucinate. It's not fail proof, but it's a way to try and mitigate it. But what's really interesting about AI and I guess the risk management around AI is the way that you test and assure your AI services is completely different. Traditional testing, it was all black and white. You'd have a function, you'd have a method, and it was supposed to do this, and if it didn't do that, there was a bug, it was wrong. But with AI, but particularly with so much of it being around language and about the use of language, it kind of operates in the grey in between the black and the white. So there's a whole new approach needed to testing. So, for example, one of the first things you have to do is understand your data and label it. So labeling, identify examples of what good looks like. If you got these sorts of prompts, is this that comes back? That sort of examples. Secondly, it's hugely relevant, or semantics is hugely relevant to the testing. So a lot of the testing that you need to do is making sure that generated content, has got the right tone, as well as not hallucinating, or you want to check that it's not offensive, etc. So there's a lot of focus on actually the semantics, the words that are being used, not just the is it right or is it wrong. But then thirdly, we've been using sort of statistical analysis for data for years, but this has kind of become mainstream because AI won't necessarily respond in the same way each time you ask it something. You have to test it, to understand it. You have to get involved with a lot of statistical analysis. So you get to the stage that, well, actually, it's given the right answer 99% of the time. Okay, it gets it wrong once, but we're comfortable with that. But it's an acceptable risk. But the whole way that you test and assure AI, to make sure that it's safer to use, that whole risk management around it, that's new or evolving. Okay, moving into the next slide. So I find this staggering. So the European Union had done a commission that's found that there is, from digital technology, going to be a 45% growth in greenhouse gases emitted, unless we do something rapidly. Putting that in context, globally, digital IT, so all things digital, including AI, currently accounts for about 5% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. That's about double civil aviation. So civil aviation, which gets called out quite a lot, as being producing a lot of carbon. It's only half the IT industry. So why is that? We've got this, fourth digital. Digital is driving, the fourth industrial revolution. So a lot of that, this revolution is powered by data. So we're creating, we're consuming, we're copying, we're using vast quantities of data, and it's kind of growing exponentially. At the moment, just the volumes of data are huge. That all needs compute, and needs storage, which is driving up the power consumption for our digital solutions. Then comes along AI. Now, AI is very energy intensive. If you can imagine creating a model, the largest language models at the moment are basically using all the internet, all the content they can get hold of. Now, to process all of that data to build the model, it takes data centers worth of compute, months. And as soon as you've done it, they go back and retrain the model to try and keep at the head of innovation and ahead of those league tables about the most powerful AI engines. So this is we've all got net zero commitments. So how do we go about that? It's the right thing to be worried about that. It's the right thing to be thinking about how we make sure that we're keeping the planet safe for the next generations. So I guess my golden rule is, if it doesn't need to be AI, don't use AI. Sounds simple, but it's so energy expensive that if you don't need to use it, don't use it. Use a traditional method. So an example I saw, which is quite funny recently, we had saw somebody trying to use a large language model to be a calculator. Now, why this is quite funny, so since the advent of computers, they've been able to do logic, they've been able to do maths, they've been optimized all the processing power to be able to do those sorts of algorithms, and they're really, really good. So if you want to add 2 + 2, the traditional compute that is less power hungry, it'll give you the right answer, it'll do it, it's perfectly good for that. I mean, so moving into why would you use Gen AI, what's really, really strange about it as well, that somebody's obviously not understood, is the whole nature of AI and generative AI is it's just predicting the most likely next thing. It's not got this detailed logic, understanding maths. So it might predict 4 when 2 + 2, but if it saw enough people, for example, saying, well, I added 2 and 2 and I got 5, I got it wrong, it might actually decide to predict 5. Yeah, so it's not a reliable calculator, as well as being really energy hungry and doing that processing. Yeah, so no AI calculators, please. There are techniques that we should be looking at and we should be adopting to try and help reduce the power consumption that our AI solutions are going to generate. So firstly, there's look to reuse foundation models that already exist. So that's where you would go and find something that does roughly what you want it to do. You find somebody that's created that, they've already trained it. So by reusing it, you save all that compute about training a model from the start. So that's sort of technique one. The second one is everyone wants to use the latest and greatest LLMs. So, ChatGPT is an example. Everyone knows about it and thinks, I've got to use this. And, the power of that's growing, week by week or month by month. It's amazing how quickly new releases and innovations are coming out. But do you really need that power? Do you really need a model trained in all the content of all the internet? In a lot of circumstances and a lot of sort of domain areas, small language models, so that's ones that have got less training, but they work perfectly well. So for example, if you're doing an HR chatbot solution, it's reasonably generic. You don't necessarily need all the intricacies of training with all that vaster data set. Building upon that, if you're using a small large language model and need to give it some more information, need to give it some context about your specific business problem, then fine tune that foundation model that you've taken. So by fine tuning, I mean you take your specific knowledge, your information, and you train it on top of the model that's there. So again, you're cutting out a lot of that training, you're cutting out a lot of that carbon cost. And again, quite often you find that technique gives as good a result as just going straight to one of the larger language models. So there is ways that you can make the solution more sustainable. I think we really need to be thinking about that. It's definitely part of the assessment. Okay, so moving on, transparency and trust. There's a lot of nervousness from people about AI. People are quite rightly concerned. How's AI being used? How's it using my data? What decisions is it making on me? If AI makes a decision, how do I go back and challenge it? What if AI comes along and takes my job? There's a lot of nervousness about AI. To manage, I guess that what we have to be is absolutely transparent about how and where we're using the AI, and allow people to understand how its usage, and also the safeguards, etc. around it. So we need to show people how it's been used, show people the rigor around it, and that will build up trust. A lot of this can be an extension or built upon traditional software delivery best practice and traditional models. So I guess I want to bring this to life a bit with an example of a project I was involved in recently. So we were building a machine learning ML model for a medical device. Now, as you can imagine, medical device, it's not making the decisions, but it's helping, it's contributing to medical decisions. So you have to make sure that's right, because implications of it's wrong could be significant to somebody's well-being and health. So it's quite highly regulated. On top of just the sort of general things like the UK and the EU AI Acts. So where do you start? Well, one of the things that we've been doing for years is kind of quality management systems, and there's umpteen ISO standards about how you do that and should do that well. So a quality management system describes good practice from the start of developing a digital solution or technology solution to the end, and it kind of goes through and describes the rigor that you should be putting in place around doing that. Again, that applies to AI solutions as much as it applies to any solution. AI is just a component within that delivery. Secondly, we were doing things like DevOps, so that's development operations and continuous integration and continuous delivery. We've been using those for decades as well, and it's another great example of we can use some of the disciplines within that to start testing and continuously proving that your algorithms are working and demonstrating that it's safe. So bring in the tests at the development phase and continuously run that through the life cycle. So another technique that data scientists and data engineers have understood for years is the segregation of data. Another way that you can sort of demonstrate the safety of the systems. So by the segregation of data, what I mean is you would create a training data set. So that would be a subset of your total data set. You would pull that out. Obviously, got to make sure it's representative and it's kind of reliable, good data to train from. But you bring that out and you'd segregate it, keep it completely separate from the other data sets. So that data would be used to build your model. So it'd be, your ML would be based on it. So you'd have a second data set, which is your test data set. So the key here, with them being segregated, when you're training the machine learning, it's never saw that data, so it can't learn from that data. So when you apply that to test it, it's new data that you're running through the model. So it will give you a good representation as to how good the model actually is without being skewed by it possibly learning from it. So that's great, but through the sort of typical software or project lifecycle, you would repeat that multiple times. So inadvertently, you could actually start biasing the model through that test data, because obviously if it gets it wrong, you're going to correct those issues. So you're going to highlight the things that are in that test data set back into the model development. So what's key is you've got the third data set. So this is your verification data set. So this is used less frequently. It's used as the kind of final checks, the final steps. Again, it's a completely isolated data set that the AI and the AI testings never saw. And then again, that can give you the certainty that the model's actually behaving, doing what it's supposed to do and doing that right. So again, this is a common technique that's been used for years by data scientists. Again, absolutely applicable here. So the final step, though, is this is great, but you have to be able to demonstrate that you're doing that complete life cycle, and you're kind of checking for issues. So just like any software, it might go live, you might find bugs, you might find issues. AI is no different. And here, I guess what a lot of the concern about people have got around AI is, well, there's going to be bias in it, or it's going to incorrectly use data, etc. So you've got to look out for that. Both with technology and with people, you've got to be monitoring your real production systems and looking out for those issues like you would do for normal bugs. But the key here is when you identify them, you would pull that data back into the start of your life cycle. So you find examples of where it got it wrong, or where the data is not representative, etc. You would retrain based on that better data set. You retest, and so you've got this continual cycle. I think being able to demonstrate that and show that's critical. So, for example, back to the medical device, we had to do that for compliance within that context. You had to show that end-to-end delivery of AI with that transparency to generate that trust. Okay, one of my favorite topics. is innovation. I mean, the rate of change of AI is frightening. There's new developments coming along almost hourly, daily, weekly. The pace of change is quite phenomenal. And I guess what we need to do in this context is, your organisation needs to be set up to allow you to actually take these new innovations and work out which ones are going to work for you, which ones are going to give business value, which ones can solve a problem for you. With that, you have to be able to experiment, you have to be able to try it out, you have to be able to look at it, you have to be able to understand it. So using an example of how you can kind of de-risk or accelerate innovation, we use our corporate environment. So we've created a thing called our digital enablement platform. So that's basically an environment that will allow you to create proof of concept sandboxes. Now, what's good about that is out of the box, it will give you a lot of things I've been talking about. So it will give you your DevOps environments. It will give you the configuration to secure that sandbox as per well-architected standards and corporate standards, etc. So you can trust that you can put data into that sandbox. It's been built so that it's sort of cloud native in its construct, so it can go on to our infrastructure. It can go on to AWS and go on to Azure. But what that gives you with that automated build up of your POC sandbox, it basically takes away the need for the developer to do all the plumbing, if you like. So when you're starting your innovation or your experimentation, you can just focus on the new things and focus on the AI, which gives you agility, makes you go quicker. The other key aspect of it is it's modular, and deliberately so. So by that, I mean you can plug and play different components into it very easily. So again, uses sort of cloud native, microservice style technology and architectures, which gives you that flexibility to rapidly bring services in and bring services out. So again, you can quickly go and find and bring in that AI thing that you think is going to solve your problem or your proof of concept. Experiment with it and work out if it gives you that value. So again, as mentioned before, it's all about the value, and if it doesn't give the value, you fail fast. So my colleague Joe is actually talking about another aspect of innovation in session 4 in this series. He's talking about the sort of cultural change required to support innovation. So a bit of a plug for him and the webinar coming up. Okay, this leads nicely though out of the proof of concept into scalability. So, as mentioned, the problem about the AI POC graveyard. Well, assuming you've experimented, you've innovated, you've proven the value, so you now need to scale it. You now need to get it into some sort of live environment. So again, following the same methodology, we built that DevOps, that automation of the environment creation. So it can now automate that move out of the sandbox environment into your kind of real environments. So again, you can rapidly, deploy that into other areas. And one of the things that is probably a really good starting point when you're looking to scale and build out your usage of AI is looking at the cloud hyperscalers. So they will offer the kind of pay-per-use platform as a services with most AI componentry, LLMs or the machine learning stuff. The benefit of that is you just pay for what you use. So as you're scaling out, as your service comes up, or it can expand to accommodate the demand, or it can shrink if people aren't using it. So that's a great way to start. However, those pay-per-use models, they're not necessarily the cheapest. So you can start as you scale, looking to prepay or pre-purchase volumes and get discounts, or indeed perhaps start buying sort of dedicated environments in the cloud. So you've got your own specific box in effect that's yours. So again, that's options, sort of scale out those cloud AI environments and provisions. However, at some point, you may find that it actually is cheaper to go and buy your own infrastructure. Now, sort of AIs driven off sort of general processing units or general purpose units. Those GPUs that you're going to have to buy, they're expensive, but it might actually work out I guess cost optimal to do it. The issue that you will have with that, though, is you're now no longer using that layer of sort of scalability that you get for free with the cloud providers. So it won't now automatically scale up, scale down, build out. You're constrained by the amount of physical hardware that you've bought. So in here, you need to start considering how you manage that to allow that scaling to happen on your internal solutions. So one of the bits of software that we partner NVIDIA that have Triton inference server, and you can consider that as kind of a LLM load balancer or cache. So what I mean by that is, it can understand the context of a query or what you're asking, for example, a large language model to do, and it has a catalog of what LLMs you have deployed, and it can kind of point and work out which LLM's best equipped to answer the question, or indeed which one uses less power to answer the question. So that's one aspect of it. It'll actually route your queries or your LLM queries into the best place. Therefore, manage the kind of limited infrastructure you've got. The second aspect it can do is it can actually look at caching algorithms and sort of preloading algorithms within your LLMs. So, for example, if you've got limited amount of space and a model's not used, it might be pushed out of memory. So what that could introduce is large latency the first time it's recalled. So again, it can kind of manage that for you. And it's almost what, as I say, the cloud hyperscalers are doing for you. But yeah, there's lots of options around this about how you can build the technology out to scale to different models based on what your workload and the value is. But it's all back to this, as noted at the start. What's the business value you're trying to deliver, and this will help you work out the cost to actually operate that, to see if it's viable. Okay, security and privacy is key. Already talked about this in a couple of points, but you have to protect with AI being different. You have to protect your data, your customers' data, and I guess within this as well, though, the AI, the threats, the technology is evolving. You need to understand what those differences are to be able to correctly address those risks that we were talking about earlier in terms of securing your environments and your usage of AI. So to understand those new threats, you have to ask some questions. If you're using partners technology like large language models, if you're going to put data into it, what are they doing with that data? What's the contract say about what they're doing with that data? Are they going to take that data and use it to train their models in the future? Because if that's going to happen, then how do you get that model back or that data back? How do you control it? Because it's out with your perimeter, your box, as I was saying earlier. And once an LLM's trained on it, it's very difficult to untrain it. So that's in effect that data now exposed to anywhere out of your control. And you've got to understand other threats as well. So there's emerging AI-specific threats. So one is something called prompt hacking or prompt hijacking. So this is where, for example, assuming everyone knows ChatGPT, you would go on and you would ask it to a question. So I don't know, what's the weather in Edinburgh today? What prompt hacking or prompt engineering is you would embed I guess malicious code within that prompt, and what it can start doing is manipulating the behavior of those large language models. So for example, you could take off through this guardrails that makes it only operate a certain way or only provide specific information. So you could manipulate them, get it to do different actions, do different things that wasn't intended, or indeed actually provide information back out that it shouldn't be provided back out. So there's a whole bunch of these emerging threats coming up. Where I would definitely point everyone to, which is what the image is here, it's the OWASP group. Now they've been around for years. It's kind of the de facto standard for securing web applications, and they've got the OWASP Gen AI security project, which is where this icon, this logo is from. So within that, they've got their top 10, like they have for for the cloud, etc. Top 10 threats. So definitely encourage people to go and have a look at that and leverage that to understand how to secure these. So there's another aspect as well. So as AI begins to get used more and more in the workplace, I guess it's getting commonplace that we're getting AI-assisted software development. You've got to ask yourself the question: if AI is generating the code, what happens if somebody can put malicious code into that code? So, again, they've got this relationship between the developer and the AI here, that the developer should be checking whatever code or whatever libraries are recommended by the AI, but they don't necessarily always do, or they might miss things. So this is a key aspect that again needs to come into your security controls. If it's generating code that you can't guarantee might not have malicious attacks in it, you need to be scanning that. So again, back to DevOps that I've mentioned a few times, you need to include your kind of DevSecOps, which is adding security checking specifically into your DevOps pipelines, so you're continuously checking that code. And by that, I mean, you're looking at libraries for defects, and you've got static and dynamic code analysis, etc. So, every line of code that's coming into your system, you're security checking. So yeah, the threats are moving, but yeah, you need to take action on these. Okay, employee empowerment. So this is interesting. So we're kind of rolling out AI technology all over the place, and including into the workplace. It's quite interesting with that kind of relationship in the workplace, and how humans and AI is evolving. I mean, what is worth noting though is, employees using AI technology is very different to traditional technology. And by that I mean, it's back to the kind of black and white. If somebody's using Excel to do a function, do a bit of maths, there's a right answer or there's a wrong answer. So, it's quite black and white about how you'd use that tool and what you're asking it to do and what the output of it's going to be. AI, you've got that kind of range, or it's operating in the grey. So I guess what you need to build up, or what needs to happen, is that understanding of AI needs to be developed in employees and workforce. So you need to almost build up a partnership approach between the person and the AI. So they need to understand how to do things like prompt engineering. So that's in effect program through language, but program LLM, for example, to return what they're interested in, to return what they need. I mentioned hallucinations before. The employee, the person needs to understand, don't necessarily trust what the AI is telling you. One of the places that we kind of see as a safe place to start with that kind of transition to AI in the workplace is using tools such as Microsoft Office 365 Copilot. So the tool there, you can bring AI, generative AI, etc., into Word or email, and it can help with a number of different tasks. What's key about that, though, again, to make it a safe environment, is the data that it's got access to. And it's critical here that you don't just roll it out without making sure that your data is secured. So somebody in a certain role should only be able to see certain data. Because again, the issue is once the AI sees the data, once it understands it, if you don't lock down the access into that, then you're in danger of exposing data to people that shouldn't see it. But generally, it's a safe environment to start. And to kind of make that transition into empowering your workforce, I guess, to use AI. So the second step, or what we see is kind of the next area, is to start doing more bespoke AI work. So this is, we're using the Copilot example, using Copilot Studio, and with this you would be building specific AI models or workflows or process steps to do more complicated things. So that could be, I mentioned before the RAG pattern, it could be go and find me some specific information about this product, or within the product catalog, and it's a specific task that's not a sort of general processing task. So yeah, you build those out. Again, can deploy those out through a sort of variety of the tooling that you normally have. But this again, it's very much that assistive relationship that I was talking about. With the AI helping the human and vice versa, taking away those kind of mundane tasks. So, given everyone's talking about agentic at the moment, I think I have to mention agentic, and the future agentic is going to play in this space about employee empowerment. Now, it's an interesting one. Everyone's talking about it, but nobody really knows what it is. There's not a clear definition of it that necessarily is well understood. So I guess my definition of it, or the way I look at it, is what agentic actually means is it's a network of AI or agents that we've just been speaking about, connected to other agents. So what you're doing is you're building up the power by you've got more and more of these things that can do tasks and can do specific things. So they all they'll talk to each other. So the sum of all those parts is greater than the whole, and you can do a lot more complex processing. Now there's two things, I guess, going on within it. at the moment. There's the kind of functional agentic. So that's, where you've got these services, and again, if they're built, kind of cloud native, microservice style, you've got APIs on the services, so those can be called into from the AI, from the agents. So that's what's calling into lots of functions. So the AI can, get some information, perhaps it's processed a form, and it knows how to update numerous systems with that information. Again, maybe saving, multi-keying, etc. So that's the first step. But then the second step is where you start bringing in the true cognitive power that the larger models bring in now. So this is where the AI can actually start working out how to solve problems, tasks, etc. that's not necessarily solved before, it's not necessarily been trained on. So again, it's using its network of other agents that are available to it to kind of work out what the problem is and how it could go around potentially solving it. And then this is really, really interesting because it's kind of changing the paradigm. No longer would AI be a co-pilot to a human. It's almost changing it. There would be a co-worker. The AI would be able to undertake tasks, it'd be able to perform kind of duties, in its own right and work them out. So yeah, a huge amount of interesting foundations need to be put in place with the technology to enable those. Okay. So I guess the last principle, collaboration and knowledge sharing. Now, to me, this is all about the data. I've talked about data a lot, but data is paramount to AI. Without data, there is no AI. So to me, this is all about how do you make sure that your data, shareable, that you can understand it, you can find it, and then through that you can then collaborate, work together with AI or not on it. So this is where a lot of the sort of traditional structures that you'd put in place are still relevant. So you need to be able to build up, data warehouses, data lakehouses, data integrations. Understand, transactional events, etc. So you can start using those, be able to process and understand unstructured data, etc. It's all the management of those traditional data technology sets in here. And I guess what's key is you're doing proper data governance around the data. So where can it be used, where can it not be used? The security aspects that I've mentioned before around it, but also making it discoverable. You need to be able to find it to be able to make use of it, whether with AI or not AI. And yeah, I was saying the security on that. Yeah, I mean that's key as well. Just making sure that only the right people have got access to it. So yeah, I can't stress this enough. It's all about the data. It's funny. Keep seeing people come. Oh, I've got an AI problem. And you can say, "Well, where's the data?" Oh, we've not thought about the data. It's like you need to think about AI as you're using data to do things. It's fundamental. Okay, well, yeah, just to recap, I hope that was interesting. So I've tried to bring to life and show some examples of kind of things that we'd look to look at in terms of how technology could underpin your AI strategy and really, I guess, give you benefit and business value out of it. So maybe just to recap and summarize on top three sort of focus areas. Probably no surprises to people. Security, security, security. What you've got to do is when you're using AI is understand the different threats that AI poses and how you're going to protect your assets, which is your data. That has to be one of the top considerations. So just talking about data, even in security, it is all about the data as well. So takeaway number two is you need the right data foundations in place to really bring to life AI and get the value out of it. And then thirdly, I think the key thing to me is this is moving so fastly that you have to be in a position that you can quickly innovate to keep up with the innovations. If you want to stay competitive in the marketplace or unlock new value from AI, you need to understand what's coming, what it means to you, how you could leverage it. So it's all about rapid innovation. So yeah, a bit of a plug. So on the data one, Susanna, one of my colleagues, she's presenting next week, I think, on specifics around data, a bit like this session. So go along to that to find out more about more details about how the data maturity assessment and things to consider. And I've already mentioned Joe's looking at the culture of innovation with the last point. Okay, well, I hope this has been interesting, and and you see the sort of value of the maturity assessment. I'd be more than happy to get involved and take you through that at some future date. So Lauren, I think I'm handing back to you.
That's right. Thank you so much. Thanks, Becky. Thanks, Neil. That was such an insightful session. So yeah, we really encourage you to take our AI maturity assessment. It takes less than 10 minutes and you'll receive your AI maturity score. And you'll get advice on how you can improve, whether that be right at the start of your AI journey or accelerating what you've done so far, or indeed embedding it culturally across your organisation. So we're going to pop a link to the assessment in Slido on the right-hand side of your screen. And I'll be emailing it out to everybody after the session as well. So we've had a couple of great questions come through so far. So thank you to everyone who's submitted. But just a quick reminder, if you've got something you would like to ask, it's not too late and you can just pop your question into Slido on the right-hand side of your screen. So let's dive into a couple of the questions now. So first of all, somebody said, as you said, it's really hard to keep up with AI changing so rapidly. What's your advice for keeping up?
Yeah, good question. Yeah, and this is really interesting as well from another angle. But with AI moving so quickly, it's not just the innovations that you need to keep up with, it's also how do you learn about those technologies and understand them, because the training courses, etc., is not necessarily keeping up with innovations. And I guess where I'm going with that is there's not those traditional routes. So it's not like you go and find a training course on the latest and greatest thing. So what I find that I do and we do is you spend a lot of time, I guess, looking up front of material. So by that I mean finding trusted people that are talking about the science, the emerging patterns and techniques. So there's quite a lot of good videos and good sources that I go to in places like YouTube or whatever, with people that I trust that sort of talk about the what next, the research that's going on. I guess other aspects of how we keep up to date with it. What we do is we work with a series of partners across academia. So again, quite a lot of it's looking at that sort of scientific research and bringing in science to look at or research to look at specific problems and understand and get under the covers of it. And I mentioned the DEP, and a lot of that's geared towards that, and it's experimenting to understand things. But it's quite hard because there isn't the textbook of written as to what's coming down the line and what's going to change.
Yeah, and I would just add to that, Lauren. I mean, I'm not a technologist, I'm a change specialist. And it was probably about 2 years ago that I suddenly thought, right, I need to get my head around AI. What am I going to go and do? So, yeah, I think you have to take a different model, as Neil suggested, from kind of traditional learning techniques. So, yeah, get yourself onto LinkedIn, follow people that you trust. Be on board with the latest newsletters, sign up to the latest newsletters, get really curious. You have to be quite self-motivated, I think, to keep up the pace. It's interesting because even within our own organization and customers that I'm working with, we're having to now come up with strategies with what I would call just-in-time learning. So it's a very different model as to how you keep yourself up to date, but also how you keep your employees up to date. I'm sure Joe will have some stuff to say around this on culture in our next webinar as well. But yeah, it's a challenge. The other final tip I would give is use AI to help you learn about AI. Sometimes I'll be sat listening to another webinar or listening to a meeting that's going on. And I'll use ChatGPT or use Copilot in work if it's a work meeting. Say, what does this acronym mean? What does this mean? Or to test if I've understood correctly, how models are built or how they're tested or governance around that. So that's something that's really, really helped me personally.
Fab, thank you so much. So I'm going to move on to now to a question from Sarah. If AI is data and my data is all over the place, how do I get started?
Good question. Yeah, I mean, I think the first thing is going back to what I was getting at with the last slide is you need to understand what data you need to use to solve the business problem, and try and collate that. You need to understand it well. So, where you need to label things, is this good, this is bad, you need to start identifying if it's representative of the data set. Identify where you need supplementary data sets around it. So it's really that discovery piece I would suggest, go and find that information.
Yeah, and we're working with a lot of customers whose data is everywhere. It's in legacy systems, it's in spreadsheets on people's laptops, it's written in notebooks, it's in emails. It's a real challenge, but there are many ways to start to sort that data, and many different types of technologies. I'm sure Neil will build on this for me, that can now go and read, as an example, handwritten notes. So I think Neil's absolutely spot on. I would always start with, what is the business problem that you're trying to solve? Therefore, what is the AI technologies that you can use to solve that? And therefore, where are the data? Where's the data kept? And is the data in good quality? And how do we start to move that forward? So I would always start within that order. But absolutely right, without data, you don't have AI. That's an important topic.
But you touched on an important one as well, Becky. The use of AI to actually find and collect your data is interesting. So, you touched an example there that, image recognition is, kind of, a branch of AI, and that can be used in a number of ways. Not just drawing information out of, pictures, or, think of the concept of, the self-driving car. It's using the video stream to understand what's going on to drive. But yeah, equally, that challenge that we had about digitizing bits of paper and handwritten documents, again, you can add AI into that process, and we have done. So you can start looking at things like, for example, as it's reading handwritten documents, some of the characters it might get wrong, or people's handwriting is not necessarily the cleanest or clearest. So again, you can start thinking about, well, hey, could I use an LLM that could go, actually, I've missed that character, but the word has to be whatever, so you get more accuracy out of it. Another really good use case as well about understanding the data. For example, you could use AI to look for personal information. Kind of highlight to you which of the documents have got people's names, addresses, dates of birth, phone numbers, or whatever in. So yeah, AI can actually use as a tool to help you collect your data.
But I would really recommend that Sarah comes along to Susanna's webinar, because she is the fountain of knowledge when it comes to, what's the first next step that you need to find.
Absolutely is. And Susanna's speaking at next week's session. So yes, indeed, Sarah, really encourage you to attend that one. So Darren next has asked, given that agentic AI will potentially be pulling data from outside of your organisation, please can you provide some thoughts on the importance of trust and security?
Yeah, it's paramount. Like everything, you need to decide where you would be happy to go to get things. So quite often, if it was formal sort of data sets that you required and needed, then you'd have agreements, you have contracts, etc. in place about it, and there'd be associated SLAs, so you could trust that. But again, some of it's quite interesting as well, because some of the benefit of it is it'll just go and do things on sort of publicly available APIs, websites, whatever, and it basically works that out and does it. So an example that I like doing is for example, I could get a system that has a look at my my calendar, and works out, hey, Neil needs to be in London next week. I know I'm going to go and book him a flight, so I'll go and call out to British Airways, EasyJet, other airlines exist, and I'll try and work out, well, which is the best flight in terms of the times. I'll then look at, well, what's the optimal cost, and hey, I'll just go and book something. So the risk there is, if you're allowing it to be autonomous and kind of go and do that and make that decision, that you're kind of trusting that it will make use of that data in the most appropriate way, which can be quite, you need to think about what grounds you want to allow it to do that in, because you can't necessarily always trust that data or information. So really interesting point. Yeah, I think the key is you go in with your eyes wide open though, and set those guardrails around around the different data sets. And if they're absolutely critical, then you treat them that way with appropriate security contracts, all that sort of good stuff.
And I would just build on that by saying having strong, good governance in place is a really, really, really important when you're looking to bring more powerful AI like agentic into your organization, making sure that it aligns with your values, making sure that it aligns with your vision. Just, just as you wouldn't employ a person into your organization if it didn't align with your vision and values, you wouldn't bring an agentic employee into your organization in that way either. So having those really good, strong governance questions and foundations will just build that trust and security with bringing an AI agentic workforce into your organization.
Super, thank you. So Lenny has asked, I know we touched on it, but could you please summarize again for me some of the top scalability tips a small business could take for AI?
Yeah, I mean, I guess to summarize, small business, I would start looking at the big hyperscalers, so Amazon's, your Azures. So two benefits for that generally you'll get. I mean, I talked about the contractual, the security side. You can get that assurances through them. But the whole premise of their business model is they'll provide services that can grow and shrink, and kind of do all that management of them for you. Again, there's multiple options that you've got within that, as I was trying to describe, so you can do pay-per-use, which might be a small business, a way to do it, keep the costs low. As I mentioned through the webinar, there might be a tipping point where you've grown to a suitable scale that actually, you want to pre-provision or, basically pre-buy, over the next 3 months, have this amount of calls and, negotiate discounts, etc. through that. That's for small business, that's probably where I would suggest looking.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think the challenge you've got as a small business is that your investments have got to be the right investments. You haven't got time and all the money to get involved in the hype that sits around AI. So you want to be making sure you're taking advantage of the big investments that the hyperscalers have put in. I totally agree with what Neil said, but really making sure that you're clear about the business problem and the business value that you're trying to drive, not just bringing AI in for AI's sake.
Yeah.
But I think our pillars still kind of stand in a sense of successfully deploying AI, whether you're a small organization of 10 people or an organization of 50,000 plus. Making sure that you've got good quality data, making sure you've got the governance in place, the expertise, the right culture, the right investments in technology, are all really, really, really key to that successful deployment at scale.
Lovely, thank you. So I'm going to end with this question now, but if we've missed your question or you've still got some, please just fire it over to us via an email after the session. So I'm going to end with this one. Do you have any guidance or advice or ways you can avoid the POC graveyard?
Yeah, in danger of repeating a lot of what I was saying. Don't start doing a POC unless you know what it is you're trying to achieve. It's the first of the principles around the value. What is it? What's the value you're trying to get out of it? Know how to measure that, because if you can't measure it, you can't demonstrate whether the POC's worked. So all the good stuff that you've got, around, I guess, the delivery methodologies that go around it, so agile or GDS in the government space, you can't do that the kind of fail fast point if it doesn't work, and also you can't build a business case to proceed if it can. So that's one of the keys. I mean, the other aspect that I spent a bit of time talking about, if you can build a reusable environment that kind of gives you the foundations of an application that a typical way. So there's the scaffolding, the plumbing, it's called lots of different names, but that sandbox that's got the wrapper of the mundane code, then that can accelerate it and let you focus on the specific AI modules. Yeah, so I mean that to me is probably the key. Understand the value you're trying to prove through the POC, so you can demonstrate that it's done it. To get out of the POC and try and move as quickly and as fastly as you can, as cheaply as you can.
I would final build on that to say most people I'm working with are still in that POC stage, still in that proof of concept stage. There's not many organizations that I've worked with at this stage that have really driven AI out at scale. So if you're in that stage, I think take all of Neil's advice there. That's certainly the advice we give to all of our clients, but you're kind of where everybody else is at, really. So I suppose it's just kind of normalizing that for people as well.
And the final point as well, so quite a bit as well, is understand what data you need to do the POC. That's quite often overlooked. I mean, I've alluded to I've touched on it lots of times, but AI is really an extension of data. So on a number of occasions, the sort of things have been undertaken and not necessarily understood what the data is or where the data is. So you try to do the POC, you don't have the data set, you just can't do it. So identify the data, and if the data doesn't exist, so you don't have access to it, don't do the POC on that.
Super. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Becky and Neil. As I said, if we didn't quite get to your question, I do apologise. We've run out of time now, but fire it over to us via email and we can answer it for you there. So if you're signed up to this session, do not fret, you're automatically signed up for the rest of the series. So next week we have Susanna Machka, who'll be giving that deep dive into the data pillar, so don't miss it. We look forward to seeing you the same time next week for the next session. Goodbye for now.
Bye, everyone.